Joining us right now is Chuck Michel, who is the president. He's an attorney. Second Amendment is his wheelhouse. He's with the California Rifle and Pistol Association, and they have just been instrumental on the front line of this. Chuck, always a pleasure. It's been a while. Good to talk with you, my friend, and thanks for joining us.
It has been a while, and I'm thrilled to be back on your show.
Oh, it's good to talk with you. This was big news, huge news, definitely celebratory news, but the fight isn't over yet. And I think sometimes our side tends to get really, really excited, which is true. I mean, and it's good. I mean, not saying that it's bad, but then think that maybe the fight is kind of over. So as I understand it, and then I'm going to get into when people can purchase standard capacity magazines. But as I understand it, the standard capacity magazine, legal to own, can't go out and buy just yet. And this still may get back before the Ninth Circuit again. And that's if Xavier Becerra, the AG in California, has request that 11-judge panel review. What are the next steps? And has his office said anything other than they're still reviewing it?
They haven't said anything about what they intend to do to take this decision up to the next level. The next level is they could ask for reconsideration by the 3-judge panel that ruled so great for us. And after that, they could then take it to the 11-judge en banc panel. And then after that, they could conceivably go to the Supreme Court. Remember, the Ninth Circuit used to be hostile to any kind of conservative sort of position. They were the most, and still are, until that statistic changes, the most overturned circuit in the country. But thanks to the Trump administration, there have been a lot of new judges, conservative judges, appointed to the Ninth Circuit. So it used to be 2-1 against us. Now it's about 50-50. So I think Becerra's going to have to think twice about whether or not he wants to take this decision up to the en banc panel, because or he might take it and then see what kind of a panel he pulls, and then maybe dismiss it if he gets a bunch of Trump appointees or conservative justices. So he's really got a little bit of gamesmanship to play here to try and figure out how he wants to go forward. In the meantime, though, the DOJ has made it clear that it is their position that right now this decision is not final, because it isn't. They can still appeal. They can ask for reconsideration, and they can appeal. And until it is final, you can't import these standard capacity magazines. So what we've got is the status quo. The status quo is, even though Gavin Newsom tried to pass a law that would make it illegal to possess these self-defense tools, and he did pass that law in the form of Prop 63, he suckered a lot of people in California into thinking it was going to make them safer somehow. And he did that basically just so he could build his name recognition statewide as he ran for governor. But he got that passed, and that is not in effect right now, even though it is in the law. You can still possess them. He was trying to take those away, but you cannot import them. Folks will fondly recall about a year and a half or so ago, when we first got this injunction from the trial court, you were able to buy and import magazines. And so we had Freedom Week, where hundreds of thousands of people brought in millions of these magazines. We emptied out warehouses all across the country to bring these self-defense tools into the state. So obviously there was a lot of pent-up demand.
Oh, definitely a lot of pent-up demand. Still more as well. You mentioned, interestingly too, and this is why elections matter, and I keep telling folks this is what you vote for, because that Ninth Circuit, it's sort of like we're seeing the judicial agenda of this administration and the remaking of the Ninth Circuit. Kenneth K. Lee, who was the judge that wrote what I thought was a great opinion, and I love that he also included the racist origins of gun control in this too. I mean, they held that these magazines are not unusual, and that the state did not do the least restrictive thing in going for and trying to accomplish its needs. And I wanted to ask you about that really quick, because I understand what the judge was saying there, and that, if the state was saying that they're trying to reduce the number of homicides committed with illegally possessed firearms, then, this was the least restrictive or the most restrictive way that they went about it. But I kind of think that the restriction was the state's goal on that. Your thought?
Oh, yeah. There's a certain amount of academic fantasy that goes on when you're doing some of these standard of review, applying these various standards of review. The state claims that it's doing things for public safety. But we know, and sometimes those legislators in a candid moment will admit, that what they're really trying to do is eradicate the freedom-loving gun culture, because they don't want people to own a gun. They don't want people to be engaged in the political debate that goes along with owning a gun. They want to try and convince people that guns have no social utility and no self-defense value. And so then the gun-owning populace is not a political force. And the government can get away with a lot more when they don't have to worry ultimately about some type of resistance. So I think, you're exactly right. They don't care. If you convince them that there was no public safety benefit from these laws, to the extent they were willing to listen, they would still push them, because it supports another agenda.
Yeah. You mentioned what a gamble this could be for Becerra on this, the attorney general there in California. It kind of reminds me of the gamble that New York City made with the ordinance. And when that started going up, going through the system and climbing up the courts and heading towards the Supreme Court, that's when anti-Second Amendment advocates realized we kind of got ourselves in a pickle here. This could establish a pretty solid precedent. Do you think that the attorney general there in California realizes, is that part of the gamble as well? I mean, how could that essentially play out to adversely affect his cause?
Well, not yet, because he lost, so he has the option of appealing. In New York, our side lost, so we had the option of appealing. So rather than letting us appeal, they repealed the law so that we didn't have the option, so that they could moot the case and we wouldn't have the ability to get a good decision. In this case, he has to either let the laws be struck down by this decision, or he has to appeal it and risk having it affirmed or potentially overturned. And then if he gets it overturned in the Ninth Circuit, then we ask the Supreme Court to take it. So it's a bit different because of the way it played out. But the good thing about this opinion is they applied, the underlying fight that's going on in all of these cases, not just standard capacity magazine cases, all the Second Amendment cases, is what's the appropriate standard of review.
Right.
In other words, does the Second Amendment have any teeth or not? Is it just some kind of a joke, basically? And it's been treated like, in the words of Justice Thomas, like they treat the Second Amendment like a second-class right. They don't give it the respect that it deserves and the teeth that it deserves. And so that's the thing we really need to change. That's the thing that this opinion really addressed. And it started even getting into where the Supreme Court will probably take the standard of review, which is originalism, rather than some kind of artificial, rational basis, intermediate scrutiny or strict scrutiny standard. But in the meantime, they said that either under intermediate or strict scrutiny, whatever level you applied, this law would be struck down because the state simply couldn't prove its case. It didn't have the evidence to show. And that's the glorious thing about the trial court and some of the trends in some of the trial courts now is they're actually making the state do its job rather than just deferring to them on everything, which some of the courts that have taken Second Amendment cases have unfortunately been inclined to do. They close their eyes to the shortfalls in the state's case.
This decision was I just basked in it, and I'm sure you did too as well, Chuck, with California Rifle and Pistol Association. Folks, you can go to crpa.org because that question, if you folks go to news, they have a Q&A up there, and I didn't want to get into the weeds too much with it, but when you brought up the importance of the standard of review, and you discuss, what did it say about the use of intermediate scrutiny, and I think that's incredibly important in this case. But that it was such a great decision to bask in, and we celebrated it and we were very happy about it. But now, it's a new week and we got to talk about next steps, and everybody, of course, is just waiting, bated breath. They're just waiting to see when they can go out and get genuine standard capacity magazines. What are the next steps with this, Chuck, and how are you now positioning to fight?
Well, the ball is in the state's court, and so we'll wait and see what they do, and then obviously we'll push back. In the meantime, CRPA has about a dozen other Second Amendment cases. The most high-profile one is probably the Rohde case for Kim Rohde, who we all know and love. challenging the other half of Newsom's Prop 63, which requires a background check to buy ammunition and which bans the purchase of mail order of ammunition through the internet.
Yeah.
And so we won that one as well in the trial court. It is now in the court, in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, and my lawyers are in the office today.
That's wonderful.
Submitting the ruling from the Duncan decision as authority in the Rhodey deliberation. So we're using this case already to try and bolster
I love it.
a win in the Rhodey case.
And for
so,
people unfamiliar with the
we're fighting
Rhodey
on
case,
multiple
that's Kim Rhodey, the Olympic shooter. She's a sportswoman, gold medalist. I mean, she represented our country so well. And she has a certain ammunition that she has to have for practice. And it basically, she would have had to leave the state because California was making it to where not even Olympic competitors in the shooting sports could train and do what they needed to do. And there were limitations on how much ammunition you could have. You had to buy a certain kind. It had to be from a certain place. And that's not what she used. I mean, it was so unbelievably restrictive. So that's fantastic news. I'm so pleased to hear that because California's been ground zero, Chuck. You have not had a moment's rest.
No, they just keep piling on. It is part of a bigger agenda to just, they don't want anybody to be able to choose to own a gun to defend their families, not to mention for sport. So I got to say, thank you to the NRA and all the people that participated in this case. The NRA was financing these cases until recently. Now it's focusing on keeping Trump in office, and that's a rightful priority. Meantime, CRPA is stepping up and pushing this win. And as I said, another dozen cases and programs. The thing everybody likes to hear about courtroom victories. It's very sexy. But the thing is, the sort of the belt and suspenders work for groups like CRPA and NRA and other groups is to keep people involved in the shooting sports, help people discover the joy of shooting, get them out there at the range having a good time. Because as soon as people get involved in the sport, then they appreciate the politics of it and they start seeing through a lot of the lies that the other side tells. And so, we're CRPA is fully engaged across the board, and we really appreciate folks like you helping us get the word out and build our influence. We're trying to influence the decision makers out here and protect our freedoms. So everybody can help us be a part of that, and it's much appreciated.
Absolutely. And I always tell everybody that I know who lives in California, and they're now looking to get a firearm and they're looking to get training. I'm like, you got to look up the folks, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, CRPA.org. Chuck Michel with the California Rifle and Pistol Association. We're grateful for your fight and all of your work, Chuck. God bless you. Thank you so much for what you do on behalf of all of us law-abiding gun owners. We appreciate it. Thank you.